Welcome back to the Venari Podcast. My name is Christian Owen, and I'm here joined by Dominik Burziwoda, who is the CEO and founder of Pear Food. Well, I met Dominik actually at a conference a couple of months back and was pretty fascinated really by his company, and thought I'd be inviting him on here and just kind of talk about it a little bit more really. What made you found Pear Food?
Yeah, good to see you, Christian. Thanks for having me. So we are a founding team of 4 people. Obviously, me as a CEO have a business background and running the company. The other 3 are medical doctors who work at the University of Lübeck, and they saw many patients with diseases that are related to blood glucose metabolism. And at the same time, we know that it's a huge economic disease burden. The US estimates actually that 90% of their healthcare costs are related to lifestyle diseases. So some new research showed that people react completely individual in terms of glycemic responses to food, which obviously makes it really hard for nutritional interventions to be effective. But it's also an opportunity, because if you use that personalized low glycemic dietary approach as an active ingredient, you're in a position where you can really manufacture very effective digital therapeutics products, and this is what we are doing. So we apply that core technology to an entire pipeline of digital therapeutics.
And I suppose, is that what kind of differentiates you then? What's on the market at the moment?
Usually the way we used to treat diseases is actually with drugs, right? Mainly, even though all clinical guidelines for lifestyle-acquired diseases require patients to have also a lifestyle intervention. Yet we usually don't do that. So presumably, if you have a patient with type 2 diabetes, they will start directly with oral anti-diabetic drugs. Disease keeps on progressing, and at some point in time, they end up taking insulin. So you need effective lifestyle interventions to prevent that from happening. And there are a couple of digital therapeutics options. In our specific case, we try to identify precisely which foods keep glucose levels stable and which don't. And we do that by using continuous glucose monitors and patent pending algorithms using artificial intelligence that we have developed in-house. And with that, we can help patients to only adjust their diet slightly. So they don't have to execute a full lifestyle change, but only have to do moderate adjustments. So obviously that makes it easier to adhere. And with that, then our digital therapeutics are incredibly effective. And whereas this use case is now for type 2 diabetes, our lead indication is actually for migraines. Yeah. And we see effectiveness at the level of modern drugs in our migraine product that we have now shown in 3 pilot studies that also all have been published meanwhile.
Oh, fantastic. And I just kind of think about what point kind of on a kind of a personal note, made you kind of found this company? Like what was the kind of the trigger for you?
I mean, first of all, my cousin is one of our co-founders, so they needed a person to run the company, and then it was actually fascinating to realize. So we started actually working on it and then purchased continuous glucose monitors. And for me, it was super odd to realize. I would actually recommend to anyone to wear at least once a continuous glucose monitor, because it will completely change your life. In my specific case, for instance, when I eat chocolate, my blood glucose doesn't go up too bad. So it goes to around 130, 140 milligram per deciliters, which is super odd. When I eat oatmeal, it goes up to 200 almost, right? So now I tell you a little bit of a secret about myself. When I was doing sports, I was eating chocolate all the time. So I was eating almost an entire bar of chocolate. It's like 100 grams per night. And even, yeah, I'm serious. And also while doing sports, when I was playing football, I would eat chocolate in the halftime, because I felt I played better in the second half. So my coach back then was always complaining about, hey, you're not supposed to eat this. And now I'm actually happy that I could scientifically prove that it wasn't a bad idea.
Well, good for you personally anyway. So in terms of like actual, the market and selling Pear Food, is it purely kind of a B2C play, but also then is there a B2B element as well? You sell to employers, to kind of, payers? Like what's the play there?
we have two product categories. Once we have a prevention and wellness product, and that we just sell it a direct-to-consumer product. It's currently available in Germany. It's called Million Friends, and you can order it online and use it. And it uses basically a similar core technology, but in healthy individuals that just want to do something in terms of prevention. And then we have digital therapeutics. So what we do is we apply the core technology, and then we add disease-specific content to that. So obviously, if you have a patient with type 2 diabetes, the product has to look different than when you have a patient with migraine, right? Yeah. And these products are intended to be prescription digital therapeutics that are covered by health insurance groups, prescribed by physicians, and then used by the patients as an alternative or as an adjunct therapy to drugs, actually.
The health tech market at the moment is, it's certainly a little bit up and down. And like, what's obviously with you guys being early stage and kind of, funding rounds, like whereabouts are you at the moment? And I suppose, how do you see kind of the outlook?
We've received around 11.5 million euros in funding so far. And then we are involved in a couple of projects that are funded by grants. So in total, the company's projects have received around 25 million euros in non-refundable grants. I think digital therapeutics are in a great position right now relative to other like biopharma plays, for instance, because you're in biopharma, you're looking at 5 to 10 year time frame from creation to exit, or also, well, and even longer until commercialization. You have a huge refinancing risk. Also, it depends on, obviously, a little bit on the indication, but if you're in oncology, for instance, clinical trials are incredibly expensive. And in digital therapeutics, it's low-risk products, it's medical devices, not drugs, non-invasive, so they have a completely different risk profile. So you save all the animal models at the very beginning, doses finding studies, you don't have those, right? So with 1 or 2 pilot studies, plus then a confirmatory RCT, you are ready to commercialize the product. And you can manage to do that within 2 to 3 years, roughly. And you're looking at funding of about 5, maybe 10 million to be able to internationalize it fully. And so you have, in my opinion, you have a refinancing advantage because of the closeness or the proximity to commercialization and the limited capital required. So I'm quite optimistic about the space. And also, honestly, I mean, as I mentioned before, in the US, it's 3.7 trillion of healthcare costs that are related to lifestyle diseases, right? So we know something has to happen. Will digital therapeutics solve the problem? No, probably not completely, but will it be a major contribution? Certainly. And I believe that in the next 10 years, we will see a digital therapeutics market that will be above 50 billion euros per year comfortably. And so I think it's a great moment to invest in digital therapeutics. And it's actually also what we're observing from venture capital.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so as well. I think, so as wider kind of health tech, there's so many different kind of parts, and obviously digital therapeutics is probably an area that, like you say, is less affected than others. And final question, really, Dom, where do you see Perfood in 5 years' time?
Yeah, so I mean, now we are intending to commercialize our migraine product, and then finalize the evidence for our type 2 diabetes product and start commercialization. What we want to do is we want to build a company that is essentially like a pharma company, but with digital therapeutics. So we see ourselves in 5 years being in multiple markets with commercial products, creating substantial amounts of revenues in each different market. So you have a really robust base and are not dependent on one specific region. And that also across different indications, so that you're becoming independent of one indication. And currently we are working on continuous glucose monitoring as active ingredient, but we already see in our data stack, where we have more than 12 million data points from multiple sources of wearables, questionnaires, tracking data, continuous glucose monitoring, that you can add up to the technology stack with digital biomarkers. So blood glucose level is a great biomarker because, for one, it's a digital biomarker, but it's also a physiological real biomarker. But I really believe in the space of creating more digital biomarkers that are able to help patients guide towards a good lifestyle and have diagnostics elements. And so I see ourselves developing strong IP there, and yeah, and I'm already observing the start of that.
Obviously wish you like the best of luck, and definitely cheering from the sidelines. And it's been a pleasure to have you, and no doubt we'll speak soon.
Yes, thank you, Christian. Thank you for having me.